Welcome to the GIMI think tank. As you know, weekly we have this platform where we invite speakers from all around the world. All are subject matter experts in different industry, but we talk about a cutting edge trend. We talk about innovation state of the country. We talk about an innovation management tool or the progress of GIMI around the world. And every time, basically, we learn new things. It's exciting. We have people from around the world in terms of the audience. So CDPs, ambassadors, a GIMI think tank, basically reliable people who join every week and are here despite are on vacations or working. So we are really glad that we have a consistent audience. And today I'm excited to introduce Tammi Spring. She's a principal right now at Spring Consulting Creative, but has done a tons of things. She's a Harvard Innovations in American Government Award winner because she managed basically the Challenge.gov program, which was a US federal wide open innovation crowdsourcing initiative. She has been a writer, an editor, content strategist, and a producer with experience in top tier media companies, including Washington Post, basically USA Today. She is a worldwide consultant about this topic, which is crowdsourcing and open innovation. And she has, let's say, consulted over 4,000 people in private and public sector organization, has worked in Sweden, so has worked in Europe, Northern America, Asia. She advises clients on establishing these platforms, on learning basically how they can plan phases to product platform acquisition development. And definitely she has experimented in different industries like environment, emerging tech, museums, culture, VR, AR, which are basically hot topics today and trends, data analytics and communication fields. Tammi today will talk about how we can design incentives for crowdsourcing and collaboration. I believe in both private and public organizations, and we have people who are working with both type of organizations. So I think all of us look forward to this amazing talk, Tammi, and please feel free to add more if I missed something from your very rich experience that you have.
Oh, thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. All right. So I'm making sure I can share my screen, that you all can see that.
Yeah, we see it.
Excellent. Thank you for that warm welcome and introduction. I wanted to talk about just one small aspect of things today, and that's around designing the incentives. I would say that every one of my clients and groups of people that I've worked with, they have a lot of consternation and worry about what they should be paying people or awarding prizes or how they get people involved. So that's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is people who don't think about that at all. And they think if we just build this, people will come because we built it and we're going to crowdsource and they're going to show up. So we have the extreme of worry and we have the extreme of people not caring at all, and then being very disappointed when their metrics don't match the results. So starting out with a baseline understanding, it sounds like you all have some incredible experience in open innovation and some crowdsourcing. And I look at this as a method to accelerate innovation by gathering resources of the collective intelligence from dozens of people to thousands and 10,000s of people, with three primary goals: that you could surface trends and opportunities, that you're looking for novel ideas and concepts, or that you're asking them to contribute solutions to problems. And we start out with why. Why are you engaging a crowd? Do you already have known resources to solve this problem or to surface these solutions? Do you have resources available to support this, to build a technology, to accelerate something in a lab environment and develop another product? And do you have financial support? I would say that 80% of the time, I'm talking with people about their potential crowdsourcing programs. They already have solutions that have been proposed. They have the resources to do it, and they have the financial support, and they're making choices not to implement these things. And that it's really only about 20% of the projects that are pitched that should be crowdsourced. And looking at a way that for some reason we can't do it within our organization or with what we have the resources to do. And we need to break out of our bubble, and only choosing about 20% of these projects to say this would be a great candidate for a crowdsourcing operation, where we need to go outside of ourselves. We need to find intelligence that's beyond what we have in our own organization or in our own department and go broader into the organization. So I think that's a very important starting point, is asking yourselves why you want to be crowdsourcing, and what resources do you already have that maybe you haven't put against this problem before you go out to the crowd and ask them to do something for you, because you want to have a measure of success. And I look at the potential solver communities, and I would say you're going to identify this in the beginning, but don't lock it in yet, because we have some other factors to consider. But to start from this point, if you're in that 20% of what we're looking to do, we know that we would like to crowdsource. We want to ask the collective wisdom of a crowd. We want to engage others that are at the table right now. That we start with internal. Within your company, your organization, if it's a federal agency or a government agency, an association or a group of people that is already established. A second potential community is private. These are specific people by invitation only. And I think this kind of teeters on the concept of, actually, is this crowdsourcing? And I would say that it is, if you're going outside of the people that you usually talk with and interact with. The third is a curated community. So let's say you have your organization, your company, and you're saying, okay, now we would like to go with an external group, specifically maybe someone in academia, or some labs, or even one partner group in another country that's in the same industry, and we're going to curate this crowd. And the fourth one is my favorite. I think this is where we see the major dynamic changes happen, is with purely open crowdsourcing to drive innovation. Anyone, anywhere, from any background, any experience level, regardless of their credentials, that if you're excited about it, they're excited about it. You have the opportunity to tap into the unknown and be delightfully surprised. I would also like to convey, when I talk with folks about crowdsourcing as a method for innovation, people kind of get stuck around technology, like, oh, it has to be something we're doing on a computer or something that drives a technical advancement. But we see huge success with crowdsourcing solutions in creative, scientific, manufacturing, design, industrial, outdoors, entertainment, every type of industry that exists. That's where we can find crowdsourcing works. All right, so here's the key to our concept today. Is what are the factors in the formula? Over the years, I've developed a formula that can help me and my partners decide what percentage of what goes into this to make a successful crowdsourcing outcome in designing the incentives. So one of the incentives is, what problem are you asking them to solve? Who is the potential solver pool? What is the solver interest? What is the incentive offered when we talk about like money, prize, any sort of tangible thing that they can get? What are the resources available that you're offering? What is the timeline, the impact, and the fun factor? And I'll get into more detail on each one of these. All right. So in customizing our incentives, we're looking at what are you asking the crowd to do? And this is an incentive because if you're asking them to solve a tangible problem, that's one factor. If you're asking them to build or create something that matches a visionary goal, that's another type of aspect. And are you asking them to build upon something that is iterative and developing something that already exists? Different types of people are going to come in for different things. So if you have a tangible problem, or if you're looking for a visionary goal, or if you're disrupting something that exists and having some iterative development around that, different people are going to match up with those skill sets, and different people are going to be excited about that way of framing it. Ideas is where we find a lot of people crowdsourcing initially, which is, we're going to collect ideas and we're going to see what happens. That's a very low factor on the scale of what people will connect with and what they will resonate with. So if you can move out of simply collecting ideas and into some of these specific categories, you have a much higher chance of getting people to participate and having success. The potential solvers. Here, we are looking at the number one thing that I would say we come up against is there a trust factor with the host? If you are running one of these crowdsourcing programs, have you established trust with the potential solvers and that they know when you ask them to do something that you're going to take this seriously and that something is going to be done with it? And I want to talk briefly about internal crowdsourcing with companies, organizations, and governments and things like that. Is that I'll try to find a polite way to say this, but I think I should just be blunt also, is that if a company wants to be innovative and they're asking employees to do very high level, high intellectual things, going outside of the box of what they normally do, but the culture within that company is that employees haven't been listened to, and that their small ideas of asking for little things within that organization haven't been met, their needs have not been met, and there's not coordination to take care of people at their day job level, it's going to be very difficult. The trust isn't there. And it's going to be difficult if you're not taking care of people at their basic needs level in the company, that they're going to be innovative for you. And this is where I would see a fail point most often. And it's easy to fix this before you go into an innovation modality with looking around your organization and saying, are we meeting the needs of our employees? Do we have trust between the workers and leadership? Is there already collaboration happening? Because if you want people to come to you and you're going to ask of them to do much more interesting high-level things, that baseline of trust has to be established. For outside of your organization, the trust factor is, do you have a brand that people trust? Do you have a company that is matching what it says with what it does in the world? People pay attention to these things. And so if you're crowdsourcing and you're asking people to do things, make sure that who you are in the world matches up with what you say, what you're doing, and that there is a tangible trust there. Can the problem be deconstructed into broad appeal? So reaching potential solvers is going outside of the bubble of the known people who can do things. I worked with one organization that was looking for tracking wildlife. And this is in situations where there was water, there was temperature changes, there was all kinds of things happening. We got them to deconstruct the problem well enough that it wasn't about tracking wildlife specific to outdoor environments and all of these factors that they thought they needed to run their crowdsourcing. And we deconstructed it so people outside of their industry and organization could look at this. And they ended up getting a solver and a winning solution from someone who was in the mobile phone industry, in the cellular industry, because they had similar issues in this other industry that impacted this group that was doing wildlife. So you want to look at who your potential solver base is based on, can you deconstruct a problem well enough that more people can participate? Another way of looking at this is how many or how few people can possibly be your solver base. And understanding this, I'll put into the formula later. But if you know that there are just a few people, maybe 100 in the world who are really experts at this, and that's what you need, you're looking at potential 10% participation unless you can drive factors that's going to up that participation. But if you have hundreds of thousands of people who care about your project or this topic, you're going to have a higher chance of participation, but maybe lower skill sets. And so those things you're going to be weighing. And that gets into their solver interest here. If they're low, the low interest is they're skilled, but they're not interested. The medium interest is that they're interested, but they're not maybe motivated. And high is that if they're passionate and they're possible to participate with certain factors. And then the final part on this slide is the incentive offered. Are you considering offering a low amount of money, a medium amount of money, or a high dollar amount in order to get people to participate? One of my partners in deciding to adopt crowdsourcing overall was their number one factor was, we want to pay less. We want to pay less than what we're paying in the marketplace to get these solutions right now. And I said, yes, you can pay less, but you're going to have to increase some of these other factors in order to offset paying less. Because the point of crowdsourcing is not to get it done cheaply. That's a byproduct of a really well-designed crowdsourcing program, is that you can get it done for less money if you can get it done you can get it done for less money. The other four here is, what are you offering? What is it in order to get people to participate? What resources can you offer them? And one of the factors is data sets. Community talks, webinars, gatherings that get the people who are working on this to come together, where you talk to every one of them at once. Can you offer translation services so that people from a broader community of intellectual capital or within the industries and other countries can participate? Are you offering the ability for people to come together in teams and work together, like a robotics competition, or something where you're bringing in people with different skill sets in order to build a bigger, better product or solution, and being able to put those diverse resources together? This is, I think, one of the most overlooked concepts around an incentive to get people to participate. One of the things that you can offer is saying, here's what we know exists already. Let's build from that. And this is a way to engage people and communicate effectively. I think if you're running any type of open innovation program or crowdsourcing program, that when you have questions from certain solvers or people who are for participating, you don't just give those people the answer, you give everyone the answer to that question, and you find a way to make sure that this is out there, that everyone can access the data to make the best decisions and bring you the best solutions. The thing that I love about crowdsourcing is that instead of us trying to solve a problem and saying, this is how we want you to do it, that you can say, this is the problem, bring us all the different ways to solve it. And by giving everyone the same amount of data, by having open communication throughout the program, you're able to help people really meet you on the level that you want your solutions. All right, the timeline. When you create a deadline, is this an arbitrary deadline or is this a necessary deadline? If you are creating a deadline just because you say this is what we want to do in this timeline, you have to think about how that's going to affect the people who are involved, right? Are your solvers people who will like to work on things over holidays? Are we putting something up in August where people are on holiday and they're probably not going to see their emails, they're not going to be able to participate, things like that? Or is this a necessary deadline? Do you need to get something done by a real timeline because it's going to impact a factor in your business or what's happening in the world? Maybe it's climate change and we have a real deadline around this solution because we would like to be handling some of these scientific factors right now and in the next 6 months. That's a necessary deadline. An arbitrary one is where you just say, we want to make a certain amount of money by Q4, and therefore we're going to make this happen. So think about that. The timeline, this is, I think, probably the sketchiest part, is you want not too much time, not too little time. You need to find that just right moment. And a lot of that's going to have to do with your communications plan and how far in advance you've let people know this is coming, or that you're going to ask people to do something. And the timeline is actually it's one of those things that can be part of the fun factor too, which is if you say, you know what, we're going to get together, we're going to code this in 24 hours, and whatever we can get coded in 24 hours, and whoever comes up with things that actually work, they win. Great. That's exciting. That makes it fun. But if you say, I'm just going to give you 2 weeks to come up with a proposal, and there really isn't time to get that done in their outside of their day jobs, then that's a little bit more difficult. And we ask you in your timeline to fit the ask, what you're requesting, and the task, making sure that those match up. Don't ask for a 20-page proposal in a week. Give people some time to think about it, maybe a month, so that they can research it, things like that. This is, I think, the impact. This third one is probably the one I would give a significant amount of weight to in your incentive formula, is what is the impact? Is it personal? Is it for a company? Is it for a community? Or is there global impact? How people connect with this, if this impacts them, if you're looking for a solution to diabetes and someone's family has diabetes and they're a scientist, they're probably going to care about this very much. There's a deep emotional connection to it. There's also impact that you're looking at, is that, can my solution affect people in my company? Great. Can I affect people in my broader community? Wow, that's really important. What if what we're looking for is a global impact and the person says, I want to do something that's going to impact globally? And that's an emotional motivation. So when you're looking at the impact on your solvers, understand the emotional drivers behind this. If it affects them personally and in their community, you're going to have a higher value in that formula for them to want to participate in what you're doing. And then there's the fun factor. As I talked about in the timing challenge, sometimes people do a weekend hackathon. We do something where we say each stage is a certain time, and you get people on leaderboards and getting them to compete with each other, but collaborate together. That makes it fun. Some people love an emotional challenge, an intellectual puzzle. And for the intellectual puzzle, that you want to design this to make it interesting for them, and that you understand like what fun is different for different people. The people who like a timing challenge might not be the same people who like to solve puzzles. Some people like the puzzle and the timing. What gamification can you put around this? Can you make this a team competition? Or is this just going to be whimsical and creative in what you're asking people to do? And so look at the fun factor in this. All right, I'm going to talk about here, beware the warning signs of what can impact those 8 incentives, areas that are affecting your incentive. Is your first one is what's the barrier to entry? Have you created barriers to entry? So research issues in advance. I think a lot of times people use crowdsourcing as a way of discovering what's going on out in the world. Go ahead and run a discovery crowdsourcing program before you run a solution crowdsourcing program. Find out what already exists, and then look at, are you doing things in an old way? Are you expecting innovation, but the way you've structured your crowdsourcing is really to essentially be a request for proposal? If you're doing things in an old way and you're expecting innovation, you're going to be disappointed. And these are barriers to getting people to be involved. If they look at what you're doing and they're saying, I don't feel like this is that exciting. You're just you've just put a new wrapping on an old way of doing things. And I think when we're designing our crowdsourcing programs too, that what happens a lot of times is people think, oh, we want to go do this moonshot thing. And then you get management or lawyers involved, and people who have a lot of process around things, and they start pulling your program back out of that excitement of innovation and into like, well, we need to get back into this box because the box is safe. That is a huge barrier to entry for people. The second part is not having a plan for implementation. This affects your trust with the people who are participating. It affects whether or not people will say, am I doing things just for the sake of doing it? Or are they taking this seriously? Is there an investment involved? It's really important to communicate that you at least have a plan for prototyping and developing this in some way to see what can get to the next iteration of your plan. But if you've got something where you say, you know what, ultimately we are going to take something and this is how it's going to be implemented and why it's going to be implemented, that also helps drive direction around what people are going to build for you. And I'll say back again, for those of you who are really familiar with crowdsourcing, is that when we're crowdsourcing, we're not telling people what solution to build us. We're telling them what problem we have so that they can come up with a multitude of solutions. And this gets into the third one, which is don't have tricks or obfuscation or deception. Don't leave things out trying to trick people because you want to see if they can come up with something that you haven't told them, but you've got in your mind that's a factor for how you're going to judge things. And people can usually see through that if you're not being clear. And if there's something that just seems like it's not in alignment. All right, here's the exact gist of what we're getting to. I use all 8 of those factors plus the warning signs and things and I give them weight. of, how important, based on what they're asking to do, is this item going to be? And I'm here giving you an example of 3 things. So you're looking at, for the solver pool, that there's a low number of people who can potentially solve the problem. This is a highly specific, let's say, technological or scientific thing that there's a limited number of people in the world who have studied this or have exposure to it or who have interest in it. And so that's at 30% of a potential 100% of the ability to do that. So instead of having 100% potential participation, you're looking at 30%. But what is the impact? The impact for your program is high impact for society and for someone personally. So that factor goes up to a 90, because for the people who would be participating, there is deep personal impact, and what you're asking them to do is going to affect society. So you can see that factor is up higher. And do you have a prize or an incentive? The prizes and incentives, I'll say right now, don't just have to be money. They can be that you're offering a deal for collaboration later, you're licensing the intellectual property, maybe you want to even buy the intellectual property. You're inviting them to come and speak at a conference. So because in this formula, I know there's a low amount of people who could potentially participate, there's a high impact in the way that this is going to affect society, that I know that my prize or my incentives can be in the middle ground. They don't have to be super high, because people will like that this is impacting socially. But because this is a small group of people or potentially participating, they're not going to do it for free. And so my incentive is going to be designed around how we are going to have them involved in speaking about their solutions, giving them a keynote at a conference. There's going to be a prize award, a cash award. And I'm going to say in this concept that I'm going to award up to 3, maybe 5 prizes overall, potentially, so that we know that for the people, the low number of people who want to participate, they have a better chance of getting something out of it. It's not a one prize winner takes all. So that is just 3 factors that I put into my formula, but I do encapsulate all 8, plus I give ratings to those 2 that are distractions. All right, so for your innovation program, it is about the money and also not about the money. It's about what's the value of your contributors. Are you accelerating a timeline because you're getting dozens or hundreds or thousands of people to work on something over a course of weeks or months, that you couldn't hire every one of those people to come and do that? So you're bringing them into this innovation crowdsourcing environment, and you're getting a lot of people working on something together. Are you allowing things to fail fast? Are you setting this innovation program up in a way that if 100 people come to work on this and 99 of them can't get past that first barrier or the first hurdle that we've put into the program, and only one person can, we know we take that 99% failure and go, we've learned something from this and we need to recalibrate. Are you getting innovative breakthroughs? It is worth the money to get these innovative breakthroughs. And so factoring in that you might get access to something you would have never gotten if you hadn't asked people outside of your organization or collaborated with people outside of your organization, or even your department and asked somebody within the company who's never had a seat at the table. You're getting these things. There's high value to that. Have you created a trustworthy environment and cultivated this trust with the people and with the community? One of the things that's really interesting is we've seen people do crowdsourcing and they're like, hey, that was fun, and it's all over, but it's not over for the people who participated. Like, they're still looking for this community and this environment. looking at your program, have you communicated clearly, effectively, and timely, and appreciated the people who have shown up? Have you validated and rewarded the wins, valuing failure, and allowing yourselves to recalibrate? If you can go through all of these factors and you can answer here for your innovation program, you've addressed these items, I think that you're going to have a very successful initiative and making incentives that are designed to get engagement and people to participate. So that is all that I have. And I can flip back to any of these slides, but I think we're at the time now to do some
Tammi.
Q&A.
Tammi, that was great.
Thank
This
you.
is Hitendra, and crowdsourcing is still it's becoming a science, and people expect it to deliver results every time. But if you don't pay attention to all the things that you highlighted, the likelihood of the activity is not going to be very good. If you don't mind, stop presenting. Let's get the talking heads together so we can see each other.
Okay,
And
so I'll stop sharing the presentation.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Tammi, just quickly, how long ago did you start doing crowdsourcing? Just tell us about yourself a little bit.
Okay. So I started out working for digital media companies where we were working with digital crowds to get them to collaborate and come together in communities and do things. And we found the power of the crowd. I was at AOL, America Online, in the 2000s, mid 2000s. And then I went over to some technology companies where they were using crowdsourcing to solve some specific problems and to engage people in helping build their business too, because they wanted to, money was tight, wasn't a great economic time in the 2007, 2009 time range. And so getting people to participate who you didn't have to employ was really important. And then in 2011, I went to the US federal government to work and run the challenge.gov program, which was everything from the legal aspects of running programs, strategic aspects, getting federal agencies to say, here are our problems, asking the public to contribute. That was also an initiative around getting small businesses involved in government. And I worked with about 300 federal agencies, and I worked over some time with governments and companies in Japan, Sweden, Mexico, Canada, to help them learn how to launch their programs and build them for open innovation. And also worked with a lot of federal labs and science companies on how they could use open innovation and particularly some crowdsourcing methodologies to advance their scientific goals around telecommunications and virtual and augmented reality and things like that. So, yep.
Tammi, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, of course, to go through this. I'm also going to talk about one program that we have, which is an open innovation program that we run in GIMI. But the first question at the high level is, as you have seen the evolution of this science, call it science, crowdsourcing science.
Yep.
And with the increased amount of technology like LinkedIn and Facebook and other social media networks throughout, how have you seen technology being used now with crowdsourcing and being done almost independent of this very well-defined programs that you're defining? Because many people are now able to ask a question and maybe get 50 people to try and answer the questions, but they don't have the structure in there. And so what's the difference between people saying, I have my LinkedIn, or I've got my social media and I've got my network of people, I can post a question, I can get some answers. What's different about that compared to what you're talking about?
I love that question. I've never had that answered before. And I think that's really important. This isn't polling, right? Like this isn't, crowdsourcing is not surveying and polling. And I think that when we look at our LinkedIns and our social media things, we also aren't reaching outside of our known groups, our heterogeneous, like just like, this is just our group that we're always talking to. How do we get outside of that? And if you're lucky and you post something that goes viral, maybe it's very exciting and other people do that. In those social, casual ways of doing things, we also don't have a way to filter in and capture the information and assess it and decide what to do with it. I think that's one of the things that, and full disclosure, I am working with a software as a service company right now that is an innovation platform, and I've helped build some, and I've developed my own products. So I've seen that the difference between just asking a survey question out on LinkedIn or on your social media, you're going to get answers, but are they accurate? Are they coming from a broad enough group of people that you're getting some diversity in your answers? And is this actually better than anything that's out there? Maybe you're not getting the best answers, but you have no way of assessing those. And you don't actually have a way of getting out beyond your bubble of people, unless those people happen to share.
So maybe you might want to rebrand that as crowdsourcing 0.1 or 0.8, and then there's 1.0 and 2.0, and we're actually on crowdsourcing 4.0 is what you're talking about. And so we can say it is crowdsourcing. Yeah, you're doing it, but it's still somewhat primitive. So let me now ask you this layout. You had the layout of how to do this. And there was this thing about the setting the challenge right, making sure it's the right crowd that you're soliciting, making sure there's clear criteria for what looks good or bad, making sure that there is a system on the back end to say we'll do something with it, we'll implement it or not, and also reward recognition mechanism. Of those things, just from an intellectual perspective, how much energy would you advise the group in this audience to spend on the challenge, setting the challenge right? How much energy do you put into it? Is it just like, hey, tell me what your challenge is and thanks a lot? Or is it 1 hour, 3 hours? What's the effort?
So I have seen people take anywhere from 1 month to 1 year to create their challenge. And it depends on how technically difficult it is. And if there's technical, scientific, some mathematics, things like that involved, or if you just want somebody to defining what your problem is the hardest thing. Problem definition is the hardest thing, because as we've talked about in crowdsourcing, the effort is often put towards, we want this solution. Well, you're limiting yourself. So if you can actually deconstruct that and define the problem and spend a good month or two on that, and also finding out what is researching what's being done out there, you're not going to waste your time or money, because sometimes you put the question out there and you offer some prize money, maybe, thousands of dollars. And then somebody comes and says, oh yeah, we've been doing this for 10 years. Like, how did you not know that? Right. So I say you invest some time in it and some resources. A month is a good time frame just to start with, about building your program and making sure you're doing something that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's great. Now, one of the statements people have made sometimes is crowdsourcing is outsourcing your failures and insourcing the success, right? So
I love that.
Right. So it's a nice expression, but at some point, those people who are getting the failures are going to get demotivated because they didn't win the prize or didn't get the award, and they put some effort into it. So how do you continue to incentivize that crowd to say, don't worry, your turn will come next time, maybe, or maybe the next time, but this time somebody else was the winner. Can you talk about that?
Yes. I advise to rarely, if never, construct this as a one winner takes all. You actually want to encourage the most amount of participation possible. And the way that you can do this is to say, we're going to potentially award 3 or 5 or 10 concepts that have come through. And you can adjust the amounts on that. And this is again into the science of the formulas. But you help people that was around this, build teams, bring people together. Like, someone might have this skill set and someone else has this skill set. Have people understand the value of what they're getting out of it. What education are you bringing to them? What are they learning from being in this? And I say reward failure too, is that if you've got people who are coming up against what you're asking them to do and 99% of them can't do it, you say, wow, thank you. You all have made us understand that the question we're asking is the wrong question and that we need to recalibrate this. And you give them a seat at the table and you thank them. The number one most effective reward that is rarely done is to simply thank people for showing up. You are important. Thank you for being here. We appreciate you. You say their name, you follow up with them, because what happens sometimes, those losers, you talked about there's one winner, the top 3 or 5 finishers that didn't get the prize, maybe follow up with them 3 months and 6 months and a year from now, because they go, I was so close and now I'm going to go do this. And oftentimes they're the ones who are going to get the breakthrough innovation that finalist did not do, because the finalist like, I delivered, I got the money, I'm done. But when you go and you meet the personalities of the people who were next in line and talk to them 6 months later, they may have gone and developed something even better than what you imagined. And it's important to cultivate that community and those relationships. And it's all about relationships and being grateful for people who show up.
Yeah. Tammi, that's a wonderful insight. I think we tend to recognize the winners and not really discourage the ones who don't do well, but we forget to recognize them. And our experience has also been recognition is worth a lot more than even money. Yep. Whether it's a thank you or it's a put the faces on the website or whatever, but people really like to be recognized, and if you don't do that, you may not get the crowd to come back the second time.
And it's very easy to just host a Zoom or something like that and say, everyone who's here, thank you all so much, this is so important, right? You can bring people together in person at a conference and say, you know what, if you guys want to come to the conference, we'll give you 50% off the conference. And we know that you have the intellect and the passion to be involved in these things. Please come. Yeah. That's all it takes. It's not a heavy lift.
No, absolutely. Tammi, let's go a little bit into the word that you use. We are moving into outsourcing more and more into team-based crowdsourcing and not individual-based. So we say you can't submit an idea and there's 3 or 4 of you who are working on this thing together. So they co-create and they get more commitment to the challenge, more commitment to the solution. So we are emphasizing more and more not individual-based, but team-based crowdsourcing. And that's the buzzword that we are using, team-based crowdsourcing. What we are seeing as a result of it is they spend more energy, they discuss things more fully, and they submit things which are a little bit more complete than kind of like a fragment of an idea to do that. Thoughts or comments on that, and where are you going in your thinking in that front also?
I am a huge fan of that from the beginning. We had one project we worked on. We brought people who had built prototypes of some water desalination things into a desert to test them. And while everyone was there, they wanted to talk to each other and figure out how, this team that was great with solar, this team that was great with filters, they wanted to be together. So we can facilitate that. I think that's absolutely critical. And I think that it not just requiring that a team go figure out how they can bring a team to your crowdsourcing. How can you as the organizer facilitate team members coming together? How can you say, individuals, you may show up, put here on your bio what your skill sets and your interests are, and let other people come and meet and say, I'd like to work with you, and let them build a team together without requiring that the team is made before they come to participate. I think that's building the community is better than requiring the community is built and then comes to you.
I like that. And I like the idea that you build your own team versus being assigned teams, because there's got to be some degree of likability amongst each other. And it's not just about intellect power, it's also likability.
Right. And one of the things I'm doing right now, I'm working with a company called Idea Scale, and on their software, they have a stage that the managers can put in called build team. So if you put in an idea, right after that idea is, if people think that's a good idea, there's a build team aspect where depending on how it's set up, anybody can say, I like that idea, and they can join the team, or management can assign people to the team. And I love that this is built into some of these technology platforms so that you can do it easily and visibly and with transparency about what's happening. And it's not some secret on the side. It's like, hey, I like those people. I want to go join them.
Yeah. And Tammi, let me just do a idea scale for those listening in the audience. Is one of the leaders in crowdsourcing as a platform, and they've done amazing work with the U.S. government and working with the government and federal agencies. And they've tried to take the theory and try to convert it into a methodology, and the methodology has been converted into a software, and therefore it can be scalable and replicable and repeatable. So call out to those guys, as we get to science.
Yeah, they're
Tammi,
great.
I want to ask you a question in terms of I'm going to describe to you a program that we have, and see if there are elements of what you have said are in there. We take we work with a senior executive of a big company and ask them what their biggest challenge is. And usually it's about growth. Where's your next growth going to come from? And so we work almost 2 weeks to try and get to that question, saying, where do you want to grow next? Or where do you not want to grow next? And we put boundary conditions on that. And then we throw this challenge to 5 teams, not one team, or not one crowd, but 5 teams, a crowd of 5 teams. And these teams are from all over the world, usually from business schools. And these 5 teams then compete over an 8-week period, presenting ideas and then being scored, and then presenting ideas again 4 weeks, 2 weeks later, being scored and presented again through a very rigorous methodology, saying discovery first, exploration, what else is out there. Then from there, what could they be doing? And in each junction, we have the senior executives listening to the presentation, and these teams get excited because they're presenting to the senior executives. And at the end of it, there is a winner who's first, second, and there's third, fourth, and fifth, obviously. So there's a ranking in there. And what we found, that we've been running this program for years, that this year we were in the Philippines, which produces one of the schools, and over about 120 of them wanted to come and meet us because they were so excited about having participated in a program like this, where they had a chance to compete, crowdsource, collaborate, and gamify with strict criteria on a very high challenge with a very senior executive on the back end. Anything in there that you see would be, and I heard you say the things already in your presentation, but I would like you to maybe point out a different thing, saying you guys are doing this, as I said it, and you guys are doing this, and you're not doing this.
Okay, so there are 2 things in there that are red flags for me that I would ask you to consider. And maybe it's just the way that it was said. Okay, one was business school students. Where's your diversity in thinking? Where's your science fiction writer? Where's your architectural design person? Where's your scientist? Like, even if the problem isn't around what those skill sets are, you need that thinking, I think. I know, I'm not going to say I know you need that kind of diverse thinking on these teams. You want somebody who is looking at the world a different way than someone who's used to formulas and standards that are taught in business schools. Yep. The second thing is, you said rigorous criteria. And I think this is probably the hardest thing that we come up against when we are trying to get innovative breakthroughs and we're trying to get people to look at things differently. You both want to have criteria, but you don't want your criteria to be such that you're measuring against old standards of success. And I'm going to give this example, and I've said this a few times in talks recently, which was, this is a very simple thing. We have a client who had an HR department that said, people are just sending in ideas of things they want us to do differently. This is not innovation. And I said, let's take a step back from this, because in the 2010 timeframe, someone went to the federal government where I was working and said, let's test remote working. And everybody thought, that is the craziest thing we have ever heard. Why would we do that? We need to be in the same place. There were reasons, accessibility, continuing operations. If something went down, they had their reasons, but they said, let's prototype this. Let's test this. I was part of the team that tested this. Flash forward into 2020, because this organization had tested remote working in 2020, they were ready to turnkey and do it. How many companies were not? Because when employees were coming and saying, you know what, can we have some work from home days? And HR was saying, no, like this isn't innovation. It actually was innovation. But you can't, how if you measure it against old criteria, could you think of it as an innovative solution to something? This isn't scientific. It's not technical. It's not, changing climate. It's not affecting climate change, but it has affected humans in so many ways. And I think when I hear you say rigorous criteria, that to me says, how can we not be rigorous? How can we be thoughtful? But how can we be expansive in an understanding beyond what we imagine, that something that sounds really crazy could actually be brilliant and game-changing and life-changing?
That's great. I mean, no, good. Two very good inputs over there. That the starting point of the crowd has to be diverse, or the teams have to be diverse. And point taken on that. We do actually say graduate students from different departments and everything else to try and match that. But point taken for everybody, that diversity is the key input of the diverse types of ideas that can come on crowdsourcing. That's what Tammi is saying. And the second part over here is this criteria that you put in there can become a problem for you if it's too narrowly defined. And it doesn't give flexibility for, as you said, what could be alternate options and solutions also. And so you got to be thoughtful about the criteria. Otherwise, you will get exactly what you're asking for, which may not be what you were looking for. Right. So you got it. So that's great.
You have such great little quips. You might get what you're asking for, but it might not be what you're looking for. I think that's so great.
Good.
Careful what you ask for was the phrase that we all grew up with, right? Be careful what you ask for, you might get it.
Absolutely. Tammi, we are about to come to the end of our webinar. I'm having a lot of fun.
I see some hands up. Did you want to let others?
Let's do this. I just want to make sure for those who need to drop off, please feel free to drop off. And we're going to continue the discussion and then get the questions from the people in the crowd who's got hands up right now. But for those who are dropping off, thank you very much for attending our webinar. Tammi is a crowd sourcing expert. She is an advisor to, as she said, to a software company also. And she's been doing this for many years. And she has got probably a lot of knowledge that's not documented. And therefore, she knows what not to do, but she may not tell you that. So talk to her, give her a call, and she can probably guide you straight very quickly, very easily. So Tammi, thank you for that. For those of you, thank you very much for attending. Let's keep on going with the questions from the crowd. Who's got the hands up? I cannot see them. Sorry.
Cristanto from Jakarta. Hello, Tammi.
Hi,
Thank you very
Cristanto.
much. I learned a lot. And I'd like to share what happened in Indonesia. We are not very developed in innovation, but we have now just started so-called crowdfunding.
Yes.
It's basically, what I can understand is it's a kind of, if somebody got an innovation successful, smaller scale, and they wanted to scale up, so they invited capitals funding through crowdfunding. Okay, so they can quickly scale up their innovation, hopefully, because it is already a proven and successful innovation. They will get much more money or much more benefit, whatever, through this crowdfunding. But now, because I'm interested to your concept of crowdsourcing, there you have to invite in the innovation context, inviting for technology solution, inviting for asset, inviting for whatever, including money and investors. Is it right to start with these crowdfunding groups, or it's better to start all over from new? Because we are still very underdeveloped in open innovation.
Okay.
Most of the innovation is basically come from the organization rather than from elsewhere. So can we start promoting crowdsourcing into this kind of crowdfunding thing, or we better start all over again in a different ecosystem?
That is thank you for bringing this up. I think there's the biggest confusion around crowdsourcing and crowdfunding because they're both tapping into the crowd for something. They're two completely different things. Crowdsourcing is when you're asking the crowd to help you solve a problem. Crowdfunding is asking people to solve the problem of funding, specifically bringing you money. So I think that they can both be done with a project, which is you can crowdsource solutions to a problem. And then you say, you know what, we have 3 of these solutions we'd like to prototype. Now we would like to crowdfund money to pay to get these prototypes developed. And you will be able to see where people want to put the money might tell you where the marketplace is going. And I think that, we can see this. It all has to do with engaging people to participate. And I think that the more we can get an understanding of who out there cares about the issue, who out there cares about these concepts, that's where you're going to find support in either way. But keep those lines of business separate, because you don't want to be asking the people who are solving the problem to also give you the money. You should, we want to be able to say, here's the people who we're crowdsourcing a solution to these problems. We're looking for engagement around doing things together to bring innovative solutions and innovative concepts to the world to make the world a better place. And in crowdfunding, you're saying, this is real strategic, tactical thing is we need enough money to build it. And what is our obligation to the people who have given us this money is that we need to make sure we can actually build this thing, and that the money's not coming in just for fun. And then people are mad because you didn't build the thing, and then they don't trust you. So that it does take some time to make sure that what you're prototyping or building when you're asking for crowdfunding, that there's a good chance that's going to meet a need in the marketplace, and that it is something that's going to move forward as into the world.
Great. Thank you, Cristanto.
Okay. Thank you.
Tammi, as we wrap this thing up, we are increasingly moving towards how much more can we crowdsource, meaning is it at the problem identification level? Is it the solution identification level? Or is it going to be at some point creating the solution itself and then going one further to actually launching and rolling it out into the market? And so on the definition of open innovation, as Chisborough had talked about, we are really still working on the front end of innovation on crowdsourcing typically. Mm-hmm. And then there's a middle area where you actually try and make it real. And there's a back end area where you try and capture the value from it. And where do you see this journey going? Do you see organizations like IdeaScale being able to go further into product development and actual real prototyping and those kind of things? Or will they stop somewhere at simulation and visualization of where we're going? So it's just a question, what does 5.0 look like?
I think that the future is that for these platforms and the structures that are bringing crowdsourcing together is to have this prototyping and implementation plan. It's needed because, as you said, and we've all experienced, if we're not making something happen, people are going to stop participating because we lose trust. And they're like, why do I keep showing up if they're not going to do anything about it? And that is the number one reason I've seen within companies that are doing internal ideation, is that all of those hundreds or thousands of ideas that are being collected are not going another step. And that's why I say, when you're doing a crowdsourcing program, only 20% of what you are proposing to be crowdsourced should be crowdsourced. The other 80% The solutions have already come through these ideation and surveys and things that you talked about out on social media and things like that. They exist. You just need to put money, the companies or the organizations just need to put time and money and resources against them, and they're choosing not to. And that breaks down the trust in the participants and the solvers. And so if you go out with a crowdsourcing program that says, oh, we want to do this thing, but you haven't done anything with what people have already given you, you've set yourself up for failure. So I think that that people, organizations and people are going to have to start putting things into the world that they've been offered as solutions already, and just try them and make that happen. So the project management aspect of it is critical, and the prototyping and implementation is critical.
Tammi, let's bring this meeting to an official end. And so what I want to do is give you a chance to maybe 1 minute, the last word. Tammi's last word on crowdsourcing, Tammi's last word on innovation, advice to the group and everybody else. And if there's an appeal to connecting with you, make that appeal also.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Tammi Spring. You can find me on LinkedIn at TAMMIMS. So LinkedIn in Tammi MS. My appeal to you all around open innovation is that humans are the essence of creativity and brilliance and collaboration, and that together we can solve, we can create, we can drive the greatest innovations beyond imagination if you create the communities and bring people together and give them an opportunity to make this work, and trust in that brilliance. I believe in it, and I know it will make a difference in your worlds and in your business.
Wow, what a great message of hope and optimism through the use of collaboration and creativity. And I think that was fantastic, Tammi. Thank you very much for participating.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for participating in our GIMI think tank. And we'll be again back next week, where we'll cover either a topic of what are the trends of innovation, what's changing in the world, or what are the new techniques of innovation management, which is what Tammi talked about today, or what's going on innovation in other parts of the world. And so tune in again next week for our GIMI think tank. Thank you very much.